I'll just do like a clap so it's synced.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Then we can just get started with some like sort of fake small talk. Uh, it's really nice to meet you, Peter. I have to say I'm a little bit starstruck because I grew up watching you on Snapchat, and that was some of my earliest understanding of political journalism. So it's great to meet you.
That's really flattering.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for making me feel old, but I appreciate it.
Sorry. But I would love to start there because you started out as a producer at CNN, but you then made the jump to Snapchat to host
Mhm.
Good Luck America. And I'm wondering if you could just start by talking about why you made that pivot in 2015, and also if you could talk a little bit about Puck News now.
Yeah, well, I can get into Puck too. That's a very different kind of media company. I primarily work at Snap. I do Good Luck America, as you mentioned. Um, though I feel like, and I spoke about this a little bit at the Reveille Symposium with Janine, but the world is finally coming around to some of the currents that I noticed 10 years ago. Not to take a victory lap, but it was evident in late 2014, 2015, which is around the time I left Snap or left CNN to join Snap, that attention was moving toward everyone's cell phones. And it wasn't hard to figure out. I was in Washington working for CNN. They, over the years, were very generous and like supported me traveling and growing and doing all the things I needed to do to become a very good political reporter. And then, starting in 2012, 2013, they, realized they had a website that a lot of people looked at. And, I'd been writing for the website, and that was where my attention was as a journalist, because, other political journalists in DC, other people that worked in politics, everyone was getting on Twitter, all that whole era. So my attention was always sort of attuned to, the web first, social media first. And, you could walk around the CNN bureau and you talk to producers and reporters and anchors. They still cared about the TV screen, which was important. But, around the time I left CNN, the median age viewer was in their 60s. And when I joined Snap, I don't really know what the median age user at Snap is, but I assume it's around 17, 18. So it just represented the opportunity to reach an entirely different audience that is not following traditional media. Again, that was 10 years ago. But also Snap has, and this was expressed to me like when I first met with them and I met with Evan Spiegel, our CEO, the founder, co-founder. The values were right. Snap's had its challenges over the years, but we have good values around journalism and media. We only allow vetted media partners on the platform. The architecture is different on Snap. It's hard to go viral with fake news or hate speech. Like that doesn't really happen. Our terms of service are good. We have an ad library. We try to get ahead of the curve on a lot of the issues that face other social media platforms, and it's been that way for 10 years. So that's like I don't think I would work there still if they didn't sort of hew pretty closely to what they expressed to me back in 2015, which is come here, try to create a safe and smart, incredible news environment for all of the young people who are using Snap. And now, we're over 450 million users worldwide. I have 2.5 million followers on my show, and the formula hasn't really changed. It's just sort of helping them make sense of the world. It's not radical, but it's just produced for the phone. I think my show was one of the first shows ever that was filmed and produced in the vertical format for a phone. Again, now it's totally commonplace. Every creator in the world does that. So I'm pretty proud of that and Snap's investments in journalism and news from very early on. That just appealed to me very much because I do care about journalism. You see the books behind me. My parents were journalists. I went to journalism school. Like I care about this stuff. So that's basically why I left CNN to go do that after a pretty rewarding decade there.
And
Yeah.
I'm curious also, since you kind of came of age in journalism at a time when social media and Twitter especially seem
Mhm.
to really be changing the landscape. Today, it feels more like we're entering this era where more and more people are joining Substack, more people are on TikTok.
Yeah.
Um, if you had to make a kind of forecast, where do you think the landscape for media is heading? And are you concerned at all about this kind of fragmentation too?
Yeah, I mean, stepping back, the big business shifts that we've noticed in media, news or otherwise, over the last decade is the big players at the top that we all know, CNN, the New York Times, the BBC, the Wall Street Journal, Fox, News Corp, whatever. Like they're doing fine relative to everyone else. Like they're losing revenue in certain cases and having to restructure in certain cases and having to reinvest in digital as more eyeballs move away from linear television. So there's that. Um, but they will survive. Like the big brands will survive. The stuff in the middle that maybe we used to read, like Deadspin or Huffington Post or BuzzFeed, ad-supported media, middle tier media is dying off. And we see that literally every day. AI search capabilities are going to hurt referral traffic even more for places like that. So it's going to be very difficult. I think the place, as you mentioned, where news will survive and move forward is one-to-one or one-to-many rather journalist uh, viewer relationships, journalist reader relationships. Substack is a great example of that. But there's few reporters on Substack who are, going to Damascus and reporting on how that country, how Syria is trying to rebuild itself and all the factionalism in that country. CNN and NBC and New York Times pay for people to be there, or at least they pay for stringers, and that means they pay for security as well. So different kinds of journalism. Again, one of the things we do at Puck is sort of take the relationship a journalist has with their readers and bundle it together in a newsroom with editors and that editorial touch and a business with like advertising and marketing and all of the sort of back end engineering stuff that a startup would have. But the key insight with Puck and with podcasts and with Substacks and yeah, with creators on social is that people trust you because they like your vibe, really, or they trust you because you're bringing unique insights to them that you can't get anywhere else, right? They are able to compete in some way to make themselves distinctive.
Mhm.
And I think that when you talk about business and what's going to be a successful media company, you've got things like Puck or The Information or The Athletic, which, was sold a few years ago to the New York Times, doing well. I do sort of chuckle a little bit at the journalists who have left mainstream news organizations like in the last year and go to Substack and think they're revolutionaries who are changing the world. I mean, again, this stuff was happening many years ago. Like taking a victory lap right now after you left your big mainstream media company rings a little hollow to me. But there are Substacks that I like and pay for. I really enjoy certain writers and readers, and I'm willing to pay for them. And again, like that's the thing. I'm willing to pay 5, 10, 20 bucks to follow people that I think are making me smarter. And that's where it's going. But I don't think I mean, I'm watching the Pope coverage right now on CNN. Like that
Right.
kind of stuff isn't going anywhere.
Sure. You also mentioned AI briefly, and I think we should talk about generative AI, especially since this is the Stanford Daily, and there's a lot of people at Stanford who are
Yeah.
building AI tools. So I'm curious how you think AI is changing the work that journalists are doing. I think especially there's this feeling that AI generated content is kind of decaying our sense of a shared reality.
Yeah.
And we're so inundated with all of this content, and it's hard to distinguish the real from the fake. So, how do we cut through that noise? How do journalists cut through that noise?
I mean, I think a year ago, I would have said uh, everyday people, voters, citizens are capable of spotting fakes. Like I was like not heading into 2024, the election, there was all this talk online about deep fakes, disinformation, people intentionally creating, fake videos of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, excuse me, and unleashing them onto the internet. I think people are actually more sophisticated than they think. They can spot that stuff. I said that 2 years ago or a year ago. Now it's getting more sophisticated. It's harder. I'm talking about video. Um, I was thinking about, I thought you might ask me this. I don't engage, I mean, I use ChatGPT sometimes. I don't use it for journalism, though. Part of that is selfish pride and the idea that um, the creative mind will withstand these technological changes. But that's just me, and I'm actually I think I'm a rare person who thinks that. Sorry, there are other journalists who think that and avoid using AI to create and write. Um, but I think they might be a shrinking island. I mean, you as a college student might know better, but like not at Stanford, not at Stanford. But I think students are using ChatGPT to write stuff out there in the world in high
Maybe.
school and beyond. Um, and you didn't ask me this question, but like my advice to younger wannabe journalists and writers, columnists, essayists, whatever, creators, like filmmakers, the things that will survive the onslaught of AI, I think will be, um, brilliant, distinctive, creative, um, pieces of writing, art, film, music that just stand out. Like I don't think technology can ever replicate the human brain and the kind of, I can't send a chatbot to Iowa to interview voters,
Yeah.
and a chatbot can't synthesize what they're saying about Ron DeSantis and put it in a larger context. It can help you write the words that you've gathered, but I don't think that's going to be the case right now. But all that being said, and I said this at Stanford last week or the week before, you know, AI is very good at summarizing stuff for everyone. And that's a problem. Like referral traffic for many news organizations and media companies is plummeting significantly. We saw just the other day the Daily Dot, which is sort of like a one of those middle tier digital media companies based in Texas. They cover tech culture. They've just almost completely collapsed, and they're dying right now this week because they were doing something that the business model doesn't really work anymore because consumer behavior doesn't work this way anymore. Like SEO referral traffic. When you Google, like, what time is the Super Bowl? Or, what did Donald Trump say today about Alcatraz? Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever is just going to give you that summary. It's not going to, I mean, it'll still give you the links in Google, but the people used to scroll down, click on the daily dots, sort of clickbait stuff, and go to the website. It's a real challenge for media companies right now to fight back against that. And that, by the way, I think like content either behind paywalls, like Puck, um, or the New York Times was smart about this, like getting ahead of some of these AI, chatbots, these AI capabilities, and doing deals with OpenAI so that their content wasn't just getting stolen. I think that was smart, and ahead of the curve. And I think more media companies might end up having to do that, or fight them in court.
I think a natural segue is many of us at the Stanford Daily are hoping to enter this vocation and become journalists ourselves, but it's also a really turbulent time for
Yeah.
journalism, especially under this administration. So I'm just curious if you have any advice to young journalists, or any challenges that you think they should anticipate.
Yeah, I mean, most journalism jobs are now located, not most, but like I think it's like a plurality. It could be a slight majority are located in New York and Washington. I'm not saying you have to go there, but there's almost like a glut of journalists in those places, and it's like they're always hiring in those cities. Whereas, in Richmond, Virginia, my hometown, the Times-Dispatch newspaper is getting thinner and thinner. Um, I would say the thing to hold on to though is sort of what I said about AI. It's that if you know how to read and write and you have a lane, like you just own something, maybe it's basketball, maybe it's like recruiting, like maybe it's high school basketball recruiting. Maybe it's you're an expert in trade policy. Maybe you're a polling dork. Maybe you care about retail and fashion, whatever it is. Like getting the expertise
Mhm.
around one thing that you're passionate about. And for me, it was a couple. Like I went to journalism school at NYU a long time ago, and I wanted to be a sports writer, and then kind of realized I didn't want to. It would ruin my love of sports, like as a hobby, But I also like politics, so that's where I went. Um, that's the stuff that I think will withstand all of these technological changes. So for me, again, I started out at CNN, but today I work at Snap. I have a show on Snap. Um, I also post to my Snap story on Snap. So you reach millions of people there. I do TV hits. on CNN and MSNBC and CBS News, radio. I host a podcast. I write a column. So like journalists today are doing this entire flywheel of content.
Yeah.
And we could call ourselves content creators too. But the stuff, it's all the constituent parts of journalism and all of my expertise just sort of like rearranged for different places and different formats. And so you've got to be good at talking and you got to be good at writing and you got to be good at figuring out how to create video. Um, but those are things you can learn, really. The stuff that is irreplaceable is your tenacity, personality, and the work that you care about. I think that's the thing.